My sister didn't invite me to her wedding, but she invited all my friends. In revenge for me not being invited, they showed up in crazy outfits. As the eldest child, I was always obligated to take care of Gigi since childhood. My parents expected me to clean up after her, help with homework, walk her home after school, and play with her, because they themselves didn't have time for all of that due to work. Sometimes, even after work, Mom would come home and complain that she didn't have the energy to spend time with Gigi and ask me to read her a bedtime story. Gigi didn't make my life any easier either. She often said nasty things and completely lacked an understanding of how to behave socially. She could blurt out something to people without thinking, and in the end, I was the one with the problems. For example, my parents forced me to take Gigi with me if I wanted to go somewhere with my friends. And one day, she went with me to my best friend's 13th birthday party. We all gave her various small things, bought with our pocket money, and my friend was very happy. Then she opened a gift from her grandparents, a Barbie dollhouse. Yes, we were already a bit old for Barbies, but my friend clearly liked the house and was even a little moved. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Gigi started giggling, and when everyone looked at her, she declared that it was a stupid gift. I looked at my friend in horror. She looked upset by my sister's words, while Gigi continued to giggle. I apologized to the birthday girl and said I would take Gigi home. I was so ashamed of my sister's behavior. She was rude to the birthday girl for absolutely no reason. I dragged Gigi home and asked her why she acted that way. She just smiled and replied that she simply said out loud what everyone was thinking. And it wasn't her fault if the friend got offended. I was furious and disappointed by her behavior. Later, when I told my parents about it, hoping they would talk to her and explain she was wrong, they instead started lecturing me about how I should be a good sister. They said I shouldn't be ashamed of Gigi in front of others, and that I should stop being friends with people who can't handle the truth. I was stunned by their reaction. Now I realized they were constantly gaslighting me just so I would take care of my sister while she got away with doing whatever she wanted. As I got older, I started to rebel and assert my boundaries when my parents forced me to care for Gigi or take her with me to various events with friends. I told them straight out that Gigi could hang out with her own friends or they could look after her themselves because I needed my own personal time. They accused me of trying to exclude her and said I was a bad sister since Gigi had no friends. Yes, she really had no friends, but that was entirely her own fault. She was rude to everyone under the guise of honesty and ended up hurting people. Because of this, Gigi often sat alone during lunch at school, as no one wanted to socialize with her, and my parents forced me to let her sit at my table, and I hated it. Eventually, after many lectures from my parents, I finally let Gigi join me and my friends. Well, when I went to college, that was when I first felt real freedom. At first, my parents wanted me to go to a college closer to home, but I studied hard, and by a stroke of luck, thanks to a scholarship, I got into a prestigious college several hundred kilometers away from home. Mom begged me not to leave, saying that Gigi would miss me and that I should take care of Gigi and be a good older sister. But I absolutely didn't care. I moved into a dorm. I was so happy to be away from my family that I never even came home for vacations or long weekends. It felt like I could finally breathe deeply for the first time, and I didn't want to return to that suffocating atmosphere at home. We had a Facebook group with my high school friends, and I added Gigi there since she used to hang out with us often. In this group, Gigi would occasionally post asking if anyone wanted to meet up, but no one ever replied. Of course, some of my friends, like me, had moved to other cities to study, but I knew some of them stayed in our town, and even they didn't want to socialize with her. I understood that my friends only hung out with Gigi because my parents forced me to take her along, and now that I wasn't around, they had no reason to meet her. I didn't judge them for that. Gigi never stopped being snide and hurting people with her honest comments, so I respected their decision. But Gigi kept posting in the group with suggestions to meet. I even heard that she called some of them, but they made up excuses or simply ignored her calls. Meanwhile, Gigi and I hardly spoke. My parents always forced us together, and I suspect she didn't love me any more than I could tolerate her company. Therefore, when I left home, we barely messaged each other. Sometimes my parents would call and tell me news about her life, urging me to visit them and spend time with Gigi, but I paid no attention to it. In my final year of college, I did come home because we had a high school reunion coming up. I was very happy to see my old friends again and spend time with them. When Gigi found out about it, she declared that she also wanted to go because she wanted to hang out with my friends. But this time, I firmly told her that these were my high school friends and she had no right to intrude on this event. My parents tried to argue, but I quickly shut them down. I explained that Gigi needed to find her own friends and live her own life instead of tagging along everywhere with me because we were no longer children. I thought that after this, the matter was closed. At the reunion, I completely immersed myself in the atmosphere of nostalgia and fun. We shared stories, remembered school pranks, and our inside jokes. I felt so good in the company of friends when suddenly Gigi walked into the restaurant without an invitation. I was in shock. I had clearly told her not to meddle in my life, yet she came anyway. Gigi walked up to our table and before I could say a word, loudly exclaimed, "Oh, I missed you guys so much." An awkward silence followed. Everyone looked from me to her, not understanding what was happening, since no one expected her. Gigi, not noticing the discomfort of others, pulled up a chair and started chatting about how long it had been since she saw everyone. I was seething with anger. Watching the audacity with which my sister talked to my friends right in front of my eyes at an event she wasn't even invited to. My friends tried to be polite, kept up the conversation, but you could tell by their faces that they were extremely uncomfortable, and we could no longer talk freely. After lunch, I took Gigi aside and asked her to go home. But she brushed it off, saying it was nonsense and that I should stop being so fixated. After all, these were her friends too. Her nonchalant attitude was starting to get to me, and I was boiling over more and more, so I decided to teach her a lesson. We returned to the table with my friends, and I decided to bring up the subject of Gigi's presence right in front of them so they could speak for themselves, and my sister would once and for all realize how shameful her behavior was. I asked everyone if anyone thought it was normal for a younger sister to show up at our reunion without an invitation. To my relief, several friends supported me and told Gigi that they were uncomfortable since they weren't close to her. My high school best friend tried to smooth things over and told Gigi that they could meet up some other day, but today they wanted to be only in the company of former classmates. Hearing this, Gigi was embarrassed, and I felt satisfaction watching her finally learn an important lesson about boundaries. She threw a spiteful glance at me, clearly blaming me for this fiasco, and left with a dejected look. That night, when returned home after the reunion party, my parents pounced on me with reproaches that I had shamed Gigi in front of everyone and kicked her out. I explained to them that nobody wanted her there, that she intruded on our meeting without an invitation and should apologize to me. But my parents insisted that she is my sister and I should be more understanding. Mom said that Gigi always has a hard time making friends. Nobody wants to socialize with her, and she was happy for the opportunity to meet my friends because they were always kind to her. I countered that I had tolerated Gigi for years, but these people were only kind to her because they were my friends, and in fact, they didn't want to socialize with her at all. Gigi apparently overheard our argument, burst into the room, and declared that everyone loves her, and it's me who is trying to take her friends away. I burst out laughing and said, "If that's the case, then why in all these years has not a single friend of mine interacted with you when you wrote in our group chat or called them?" Gigi looked hurt and started making excuses, like everyone was just busy, but I sharply replied that they were only busy avoiding her because they aren't her friends. Perhaps it was harsh, but I wanted her to know the truth. My father started saying I was selfish and should apologize to Gigi, but I stood my ground. She was the one who violated boundaries, came to a meeting where no one invited her, and she would have to face the consequences. This became the final straw that completely destroyed our relationship. Since then, Gigi and I haven't spoken and didn't even try to be polite when we met at family holidays. Years later, when I was getting married, my parents forced me to invite her, saying that Gigi would be terribly offended if I didn't invite her, and that they didn't want the rest of the family to find out about our conflict. I reluctantly invited her, and my parents even demanded that she be my bridesmaid. But here I stood firm and threatened that I would cancel the invitation altogether if they pushed any further. Fortunately, I have a loving and supportive husband who perfectly understood the dynamics of my relationship with my sister and never asked unnecessary questions about why I didn't want to involve her in the wedding. Over the years, I started acting politely with Gigi, but no closeness ever developed between us. And now to the incident itself. Gigi got married a week ago. Her husband, Rick, is 15 years older than her. She met him while working at a restaurant. Gigi never stayed long at any job and kept telling our parents she wanted to get married. So Rick became her knight in shining armor. She was thrilled to finally get her life settled. I found out about her wedding from cousins and parents. Unsurprisingly, I didn't receive an invitation. To be honest, I wasn't worried since we don't have a good relationship anyway. But to my surprise, Gigi sent electronic invitations to all my friends in that very Facebook group where I added her many years ago. I had already forgotten about that group. Nobody uses Facebook anymore. And I was stunned that she invited my friends with whom she doesn't even socialize. Some of them contacted me, asked if I was going too. And I said that Gigi didn't invite me. They were in shock that she invited them, but not me. I explained that I didn't care if they decided to go, because I have no relationship with her. I think this news spread quickly among my friends, because many wrote to me, outraged at how rude it was on her part to invite them. Almost strangers, but not me, even though I once took care of her and looked after her as a child. I tried to make it clear that I was fine with her decision not to invite me. But since Gigi publicly invited all my friends, but not me, it seemed to them that she demonstratively decided to exclude me from the guest list. I talked about this with my parents and reminded them how they forced me to invite her to my wedding for the sake of the family. But Mom started justifying her, saying that the guest list was Gigi's decision and they had nothing to do with it. Feeling betrayed, I told them that she invited all my friends, and because of this, everyone is wondering why she demonstratively crossed me out. But my parents, as usual, took her side and stated that these are also her friends and Gigi would be happy if they came. I realized that talking to them was pointless and didn't bring up the subject again. Last week, on my sister's wedding day, I spent time with my husband and son. Kyle knew I was a little upset and took us to the beach. We had a great day. I turned off my phone because I like to have internet-free days when I spend time with loved ones. Returning home, I found a bunch of messages and missed calls from my sister and parents. Puzzled, I opened the last message from Gigi, which had a photo attached. She wrote that it was all my fault and that she would never forgive me for ruining her wedding. In the photo were my friends, and I gasped. They were in long, multicolored dresses and looked absolutely ridiculous. One friend even threw on a bright boa. Another came in a summer hat. Just so you know, a boa is a long, narrow scarf made of fur, feathers, or very light fabric, used as an accessory to clothing. I couldn't understand why anyone would dress like that for a wedding at all. The whole thing looked more like a silly costume contest than a celebration. I couldn't even help but chuckle at how ridiculous they looked. My sister finally got through to me. Obviously, she had been trying to contact me all day, and when I picked up, she screamed that I was selfish and ruined her wedding. I tried to calm her down, saying I had no idea why my friends dressed like that, but she continued to blame me. She claimed I was just jealous and specifically asked them to dress that way to turn her wedding into a laughingstock. I felt a little sorry for her, but I couldn't understand why she was blaming me, even though I had nothing to do with it. My parents also wrote that they were disappointed in me and that I should have stopped my friends from such behavior, which, of course, is complete nonsense. I don't know if I should explain anything to them or let them continue blaming me. I started thinking that perhaps my friends dressed up that way precisely because they knew I wasn't invited, and maybe there is a share of my fault in this. Perhaps I should have explained everything to them better. Am I to blame for my friends turning my sister's wedding into a masquerade? Well, before we continue, I suggest you answer the author's question in the comments right now. Personally, everything is obvious to me here. She is completely not to blame for this, because it was the friends who committed this act. Whether the friends are to blame is a debatable question. Know that the author is not to blame is, in my opinion, 100%. Although in life, of course, there is never 100%, so perhaps it's worth looking for that 1% of guilt. Well, what could her guilt be? In that, she told her friends it was wrong for her sister, for example, to come to that reunion evening. But then again, it seems to me the sister said everything absolutely correctly, defined her position, and there is nothing wrong there. In the end, on the contrary, she tried to involve her sister in her company, but unfortunately, nothing ever worked out. And are the friends to blame? Well, they could have just simply not come. And probably that would have been more correct than doing something like this. But on the other hand, they wanted to support their friend, who was clearly offended here. And Gigi herself had barged in without an invitation back then, so they decided to take revenge this way. Is it bad or good? I'm waiting for your opinion, and let's continue. Update 1. I talked to Kyle, and we both decided that I needed to clarify the situation with my family. But first, I had to reach out to my friends for an explanation. By this time, photos from Gigi's wedding had already flooded social media, and many had found out about the incident. I gathered my friends on a video call and asked why they dressed like that. To my surprise, a friend said directly that they decided to dress this way as a sign of quiet protest against Gigi's habit of sticking her nose in everywhere. Since the invitation didn't specify a dress code, they took this chance to voice their position. They admitted that over the years they were tired of Gigi's persistent attempts to join our company, and that sometimes she even spoke poorly of me behind my back, which they, of course, didn't like. Despite knowing that my parents forced me to drag Gigi along, they still hoped she would one day stop pestering them. No, it didn't happen. Her intrusion into our reunion reminded them how annoying she had always been. When they found out that Gigi intentionally excluded me from the wedding guest list, they decided it was the perfect moment to teach her a lesson. It became obvious that my friends clearly saw her true motives and always considered her more of a burden than a real friend. Their eccentric outfits at her wedding were a way to express their annoyance and give Gigi a subtle hint that they aren't her friends. When I told them Gigi was blaming me for the wedding fiasco, they sincerely apologized. They immediately offered to send her a collective message confirming it was exclusively their idea and to clear me of any suspicion. I thanked them for their support and assured them I didn't hold a grudge against them for the outfits at Gigi's wedding. Yes, their choice of clothing looked strange, but I understood that their accumulated irritation was behind it. I told them that the main thing for me was for Gigi and my parents to understand the meaning of their message about boundaries and stop blaming me. After the conversation, the friends wrote to Gigi in our Facebook group, explaining that the idea was their own and I knew nothing about it. I know Gigi read this message because instead of answering them, she called me and started screaming that I was supposedly trying to dodge responsibility and manipulating my friends. She said her wedding is now the laughingstock of the family, and these stupid photos are circulating on social media. I understood her irritation, so I explained as politely as possible that she cannot blame me for what my friends wore to her wedding, considering I wasn't even invited there. I told her that even after my friends directly admitted that I had nothing to do with it, and she still chose not to believe it, there was nothing more I could do. I emphasized that I had no intention of ruining her day, and my friends were only expressing their annoyance with her intrusive behavior over all these years. Despite my explanations, it was clear that Gigi would not accept any version that didn't coincide with her beliefs, and I quickly ended the conversation. My husband thinks my parents will be able to help her figure everything out, but I doubt it. I don't know if there will be any use from them, but this weekend I'm going to talk to them and see if they can resolve the situation. Update 2. Hello everyone. A week has passed since my last update. As expected, the conversation with my parents didn't help at all, but rather only worsened the situation. When I explained everything, accusations suddenly poured down on me. They stated that I should have controlled my friends, implying that their strange outfits were to some extent my responsibility. My attempts to explain that I didn't know about the friends' plans led nowhere. My parents, as usual, took Gigi's side, expressing disappointment and stating that I should have warned her about the friends. I was bewildered and told them that I wasn't involved in this at all, and they did it all without my knowledge. But my parents, like Gigi, refused to believe it. Feeling misunderstood and irritated, I realized that settling this conflict with the family would be much harder than I thought. The strained relationship with Gigi and my parents' constant bias in her favor left little hope for a fair outcome. Kyle, who came with me to this conversation, stood up in my defense and told my parents straight out that I'm not the kind of person who is capable of stabbing someone in the back, let alone my own sister. He said that on Gigi's wedding day we were away since we weren't invited, and we didn't even know all of this would happen. He emphasized that it's unfair to accuse me without a single piece of evidence. Mom argued that I might have egged my friends on to dress that way when I told them I wasn't invited. But Kyle replied that, on the contrary, I told the friends I was fine with the lack of invitation, and their choice was entirely on their own conscience. I realized my parents weren't going to back down and told them, if you don't want to believe me, then there's no point in talking further. I also stated that I had tolerated my sister and cared for her for years, but I was no longer going to be the scapegoat. I told them about my decision to cut Gigi out of my life forever. Mom tried to object, but Father stopped her. After that, we left to distance ourselves from the situation, hoping that over time their emotions would subside and my parents would see the truth. Unfortunately, they still haven't contacted me, so it seems they decided to stick to their opinion. It's sad to realize that my parents clearly put my sister above me, even though I was the one who always helped her. I don't know what lies ahead for us, but if my parents choose to support her, let it be so, even if it's disappointing. I blocked Gigi and for now plan to leave it exactly like that. Update 3. 5 months have passed since my last update. Since then, much has happened. First of all, I started going to therapy. I know many of you advised this, as I had many childhood traumas, and I really needed to talk through my feelings and vent the accumulated emotions. Therapy changed my life. Now I feel much lighter. I finally know how to express my feelings correctly, and I'm sure I did the right thing when I stood up for myself in the story about Gigi's wedding. My parents occasionally tried to contact me over these months, but instead of clarifying anything or at least apologizing for all the accusations, they acted as if nothing had happened between us. I quickly realized they only wanted one thing: access to my son, their only grandson. Therefore, I ended communication with them for good. I don't want them to ever have the opportunity to treat my child the same way they treated me. Meanwhile, Kyle and I focused on our lives and found support in each other. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Kyle is a wonderful husband. He knows how hard the decision to cut my parents out of my life was for me, but he never once made me feel lonely in this choice. We plan to go on vacation with our son for the upcoming holidays. All I can say as a result of this experience: if you have a family member who is so toxic, please, for the sake of your mental health, remove them from your life. Don't let this person poison your life. Believe me, one day you will find someone who will love you for who you are. Well, that's all. Thank you for listening to this story to the end, despite my nasal voice today. The fact is, I got sick. I think you heard it, and I apologize to you for that. Also, I suggest watching our previous videos, which you will see right here, and be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason you haven't done so yet. Good luck.